Yeah.
Just before we begin here, John, you've got rid of the cock off the wall, yeah? The Ratana's cock. Good.
Yeah, so we had we just had a funding meeting with a community funding project for the projects that we're thinking about.
Yeah, I was on the meeting via Zoom link, and all I could see in the corner of my screen was the Ratana's cock during the whole meeting.
How was your session, Nick?
My session was great. Yeah. So I just done 3 weeks in Rockfield with Nada Surf, co-producing the new album with Surrey and Laughton. Mainly a tour manager and front of house for lots of amazing bands and artists over the years. We've known each other since the Ash days back in 90, whenever that was, 94, 95. So it was great to work with him and do another album. I did Nada Surf's last album anyway. So yeah, all went to Rockfield for 3 weeks, had a great session. It was cold back there. And
cost of living.
Yeah, no, it was just cold in general. But we had a great time, and we've nearly finished it. We're going to do a few more days in Leeders, where you are right now, just to tie in a few bits that they've been working on in their own studio since we left. Yeah, it'll be on to mixing off to the States to get someone to mix it, and it'll be out in all good record stores near you later this year. So we'll go and buy it and go and see them live. So for fans of kind of Teenage Fan Club and bands like that, then I'd recommend going to check out Nada Surf. No, really good, and another great batch of songs. There's 3 or 4 big singles on this album as well. Pretty straightforward. We have a kind of a routine where kind of Ian is kind of doing all the kind of logistics and organisation and kind of rounding up the troops and making the session flow and kind of organising what we're going to be doing on what days. And I'm kind of just concentrating on the engineering and the music side of it, and doing all the editing and kind of keeping that going. So yeah, I'm first in, last out, and Ian's kind of it works really well. He's known the band for years, so he can kind of keep the session flowing that way. As long as he's got his pasty there for lunch and and his beer there in the evening, he's a happy man.
Episode. Should do a whole episode just on studio food.
Yeah,
because like especially pasties, pot noodles, anything yellow based.
Yeah,
fruit occasionally.
Yeah, and sometimes we're 2 weeks into a session and we go, we haven't drunk any water, John, for 2 weeks. Just coffee and beer for 2 weeks. But yeah, you've got to remember to keep your water up in the studio.
Was it on Dexter's session where I think our diet was a whole chicken?
Yeah.
And some falafels?
Yeah, every day. Chicken, falafels. I think we might have had some cashews in there as well.
Yeah.
Bands try and be healthy. And
I think that was our choice, wasn't it? I think we thought that was healthy.
Yeah, but bands try and be healthy. And then Penfold arrives with all the goodies from the co-op, the crisps of death and things like that. And it's impossible when they're sat there not to touch them, especially when it gets late and you're tired and you start to flag a bit. You think, oh yeah, I'll just have one of those cookies or one of those bags of crisps.
That was one of the greatest moves by co-op, wasn't it? Just in terms of moving from the town centre just to be in the first shop.
Yeah,
to Rockfield.
To Rockfield. So you just have to nip to the co-op, pay through the roof for everything. But they do fresh croissants in the morning, John.
Ooh.
And fresh the old white chocolate and cranberry cookies.
Oh, cookies! Yeah. What I was thinking about today was we talked a little bit about careers, I suppose, with bands and like musicians and like songwriting careers, because we've talked about this topic quite often, and I suppose it came up a little bit today in the funding meeting, was around about assistants.
Yeah.
Really, I suppose, like, what makes a good assistant? What would you say? What advice would you give to people who might be at the starts of their career? Where would they start how would they start by getting into like the role of assistants or going down that path?
I mean, it's so tough because at the beginning, you're obviously expected to come into an environment you're not used to being in, really, get paid nothing or maybe some expenses or next to nothing and work long hours. But it's still the best way into the industry to work with engineers and producers and in big studios, get your foot through that door, because these places and these people get so many applications that it's really difficult to get in. And of course, everybody's got a degree now. So how do you differentiate between the ones who've got a degree when you're going to employ someone and ones who's going to be good at the jobs. And that's usually the ones that have gone and done an internship or done some work experience or shadowed an engineer or producer and can have that hands-on experience. You're much more likely to pick that person if they've done 3 months with, say, a producer we know that producer wouldn't put up with them in the studio if they were an idiot. So if they've done that, then they're probably suited to the job and their studio etiquette will be good and all things like that. So you're more likely to take them on as an assistant. But at the beginning, it's so hard. I mean, at the moment, we've just taken young lad on, Reese, and he's done really well. So he has no kind of training or experience or no degree. He hasn't done a technical course or production course or anything. But he was always on time. He was always available. He stayed start to finish. He did as much as he could. He got on with everybody. He really fitted in, and that counted for much more than whether he had a degree. Yes, it would have been nice for him to go on Pro Tools and kind of, maybe do some of the editing and things like that. But generally, all the other things made up for that. And I'd have to show him everything, like even the basics about setting up microphones and things like that. But that was fine because he found his role. He was really useful to the band. The bass player wanted to go to the shops every day to get the food because he was cooking for everybody. There was lots of people flying in. So there was airport trips. There was picking people up from the station, things like that. And he was brilliant at doing all that. And he was always available, really enthusiastic. And he basically got on with everybody. Now, there's others who've come in recently and they're doing a course, they're doing a degree, they've had training, they know a lot more. So you ask them to put a mic up, no problem. They'll go in and they'll put a mic up. You ask them to go and set the guitar rigs up, they'll go in and do that, no problem. You ask them to do some basic edits on Pro Tools, they can do that, no problem. But counteract that with the fact that they turn up late or halfway through the afternoon, they go, oh, I forgot to tell you I'm going this afternoon, which is fine. If they're not being paid, they're free to come and go as and when they want to. The thing is that it's really difficult to organise. If they've told you they're going to be there and all of a sudden the last minute they tell you they're not going to be there and you've organised for something that's going to be happening, maybe you've got an orchestra coming in or a choir coming in, you need that extra pair of hands and all of a sudden they throw, oh, I'm going to go. That organisational thing and then not really being part of the session because they miss out on so much. So they miss out on the night things that go on, that kind of the camaraderie and the kind of social life that happens when you finish, if they're only there for those few hours. Yeah, the fun bits. So you get someone then who's got much more experience and much more technical knowledge, yet they don't quite fit in because they're not, there's always an excuse. They're always late. They're always sorry, I can't make tomorrow because this, or can't make tomorrow. And it's like, right, well, okay, I understand, you're only being paid a low amount of money, but how else are you going to learn if you're there all the time and see an album through from start to finish and to know if you're really going to love it. And so that's kind of how we can find out who really wants to do it and who doesn't. So the technical ability at the beginning is useful, but it's not the be all and end all.
I've taken people on the same thing, like they say, right, okay, session starting at 10. If we can get in at 9 o'clock just before, so just have a bit of time to set up the mics and everything, that'd be great. And then they kind of rock up at 10:30, 11 o'clock. I remember I did one session in the hall and it involves taking a 100-foot multi-core around the rooms into the back, and there's quite a lot of setup packed down. So I'm normally in quite early to do that. So if we can get in for about 9 o'clock, that'd be great. The session goes on for quite a bit, and it's coming to pack down. So I got a lift now. I got to go. It's
yeah.
Great.
And you don't, on the one hand, they're not really being paid, so they are kind of free to come and go. It's those setups and pack downs where they're really going to learn, and they're really going to learn the amount of work and effort that's needed, and all the work that goes on around the session before and afterwards. And also, you've kind of, if you'd have known they weren't going to be there for the pack down, you'd have got someone else who did want to be there for the pack down, but you have no chance to organise that then because they throw it on you at the last minute. So it's getting a balance. We've been fortunate to have some great assistants over the years, but you can't keep them forever, and you don't want to keep them forever. The point is they come with you for a year, 18 months, learn the ropes, get the experience, and then move on to become engineers or producers or get full-time jobs at studios, or they've gained all that knowledge to run their own studios and things like that. And we've had obviously Chris Penfold, who was great, always got on with people, was always there on time, always stayed late at night. But that extra effort, and I think it fast-tracked him on to becoming a good engineer and producer and being able to run his sessions at his own studio better. So these kind of recent studios, and say Reese has only just joined us, but he's already doing really well. I think he learned so much in that 3 weeks on that session that he would have taken him months and months to learn that.
I suppose I was in a weird position. I self-taught and recorded myself, so I was always kind of making things up as I was going along and watching producers before working with you. And I remember when you go on a residential session where you're in for 2-3 weeks, it's not like, when you're teaching or something, you might get 2 hours, 3 hours on a lesson. It's not really the same, because you might be right. Let's go mic up a drum kit.
Yeah.
And you just about got the mics up. You might have got a sound, and it's time to pack it all down, and look like someone else is coming into the room. So you don't really get that time. You get to like put the studios out and do things yourself, but because you're not watching like people who are doing this day in day out, then you won't be learning as quickly. And like the things that you learn from like sitting in with yourself or like Gil Norton, Greg Haver. The first session I think I worked with in house for Rockfield was for Greg, and it was doing strings from Chensky and just learning like decatry setup and like how they approach that. It was just became really useful and really helpful, because when it came to like public service broadcasting, and we had it was basically a day of strings, a day of brass, and then we had the choir. Just having that set up, going, okay, cool, I can do that. I know how to do that.
You've been there in an under pressure situation in a studio that costs a lot of money with players that cost a lot of money. You've got to get in there, get it done. It's got to be well recorded, and it's got to be done. So you've had that experience, and it's hard to have that experience in a classroom, because when you're doing 14, 15, 16-hour days for 3 weeks, all these eventualities that arise, like there's a problem with the desk, or someone's not, is ill, or there's a problem with this track, or something's happened, or you got to change something, or the drum sound's not right, so you want to move the drums. These things don't arise in a classroom scenario. So when you're part of that session for that long, all these different situations and all the things that arise, and there's all the fun parts too, that and you really learn what happens on a session. And the more sessions you do and work with producers, you see how they deal with different artists and different people, and when to do certain things and when not to do certain things, and how you get yourself out of that situation, or how you create the sounds that are in people's minds and things like that. So it's brilliant. And as I say, Reese on this new session, we will have him on actually talking about this at some point, and how he's getting on and what ideas for the future are, because he's someone who's just joined us, and he's literally just done the one session, and he's coming back to do another couple with me week after next. Yeah, and he's doing well. He's already got his nickname. So, once you start getting your nickname,
it's an important part.
Really, you're in there. And if you don't get a nickname, then you're not going to be there long. So, yeah, he's Spoons from now on. So he was always coming in with his little teaspoon, asking everybody what they wanted. And also his name's Reese, and that became Reese Witherspoons, and that became Weatherspoons, and that became Spoons. And he always had his little teaspoon. So he's now Spoons. Chris Ramsey was Penfold, just because Thunder said, well, he can't come in the room. Penfold. He's obviously going to stay because he's brilliant. So he can't come in if he hadn't got a nickname. Everyone has to have a nickname. Danny just went Penfold, and he's Penfold from Danger Mouse, for those old enough to remember Danger Mouse. And yeah, we've had some great nicknames. Candles, obviously, is another good one.
But when your name is Joe Malone.
Yeah, Joe Malone makes candles, so he's Candles. Josh Wan, another good one, because it's similar to Gokwan, so he's Josh Wan. Yeah, looks good naked. Yeah, so you become part of the session, part of the feel of the thing, and you get used to how much work and effort goes in after 3 weeks, all them hours, how tired everyone starts to get, and how you have to keep that energy going to the end, and how much work and effort really goes into making an album, especially nowadays, in a short space of time.
Is it beneficial though, because he hasn't had the experience? Is that almost better, or is there?
In some respects it is, because he has no preconceptions that he's a producer already, he's an engineer already, and he's literally just there taking advice, like, what do I do? And and you just tell him the usual things, the studio etiquette, don't comment on this, and you don't have don't start saying this in the middle of when someone's trying to work stuff out, because you don't know what they've already tried. But obviously if someone asks you, then you give your opinions, and so it's very raw. I mean, yeah, it is frustrating when you think, I would like him to just be able to go and set that up for me while I'm doing this, but I need to go and show him how to do it. I can't just expect him to know it, because he doesn't. Yeah. So there's those frustrating elements, but that's also rewarding when you show someone how to do that, and they only need to be shown once. And the next time they're like confident, I'll go in, I'll do that, I'll sort that out, and you go and check it, and it's done. Because obviously they've taken that in, they're listening, they're concentrating. It's important to come and do whole sessions and just see the whole process start to finish, and get to learn, especially with a band like Now to Surf, when they all live in different places around the world. So the logistics of getting them all to the studio and flying them in, and their flights and their hotels, and the daily briefings that everyone has, and all things like that. So you're getting to see all these other aspects of a working session. And you're in somewhere like Rockfield. So, you come with us, you learn Rockfield inside out because you keep coming there with us on sessions. And then the opportunities arise where Rockfield haven't got an assistant for a session. They know that you've been working in there dozens of times with us. So why not get you in? And then you start getting paid as an assistant in studios like that, or whether we go to Red Kite or wherever we go, or whether they come on as engineers and assistants then on bigger sessions when there's budgets and they start earning money then. But the only way to do that is to really know the studio inside out, because to make a good assistant, when a new producer comes in, they just expect the assistant to know the studio. You're the person they're going to go to tell them how everything operates, and when there's faults, why is this happening? You need to know.
Yeah, and how do you work around that quickly?
So you can't go on sessions like that until you know all those things. So in the meantime, the only way to learn that is to come on sessions with like me and you, and learn all the quirks of a studio, learn how to fault find, learn how to keep a session going if something starts to go wrong. And you can't just, you need to be in a room on a session when all those things arise, and then take note of, write it down. That happened, and then we had to do this. But just be a sponge and take it all in. Yeah, we've been fortunate. We've had some stinkers, I have to say. There's we've had a couple that have maybe lasted an hour.
An hour?
I think it was 2 hours. One at Leeders Farm was like 2 hours maybe. There's been a couple who we got in at Rockfield and they just didn't last. There's some that didn't last any time because they didn't turn up, and then they never were never seen again. But they come and go, so we have to go through some, and for whatever reason some just don't fit in, or they it's not quite right. And we always try and give opportunities to people and have a few come in and go at the same time, but you always find a good one, then you like to hang on to them. But the plan is not to have them working for you for nothing for forever. The plan is that they come on board, then they become an engineer and an assistant engineer and start getting paid. And then hopefully they go on and get a job in the industry. And then we move on to the next one. So we're always training new people up. But yeah, we've had some Candles was a great assistant, great person to have in the studio. When you're feeling down, you're a bit tired, all you needed to do was see Candles in the morning. You're already sets you off laughing. You're ready for the day. And then you've got like someone like Josh, who's just super, super talented, a great producer and engineer. And you could tell that from the beginning. Made a great assistant because he could get on with everybody, but technically he knew everything. You knew he'd just go on to do great things as well.
Because Josh, if I remember rightly saying, I think this came up on the Rockfield session. Did he ring Leeders Farm? Did he? Because you spoke to him over the phone, did you?
Yeah. I think I can't quite remember. It was about Leeders Farm, and then he came in. I think the first session he came in on, I was just coming back from Leeders Farm, was possibly the Union session with Luke Morley. I think it was that one, and his first when he came in, which was at Rockfield. I think I spoke to him while I was at Leeders Farm, but you just knew he was great to have around and a great assistant, but you knew he was going to go on and become a great producer and engineer. Now he's running his own studios. He's worked in lots of great studios. Yeah, he's really experienced now. Yeah, and going on about good assistants, we were lucky at Leeders Farm. I ended up with 3 assistants because we obviously had the main studio there, and then we were so busy we built Studio 2 to accommodate kind of more budget sessions and local bands. We had 2 studios which were pretty much booked all the time, and so there became a need for 3 assistants, because I've been in a position before back in the 90s when Rockfield only had 2 assistants and both studios were fully booked all the time. And me and a guy called Paul Reed, we just had to work every day. He was mainly in the quadrangle and I was in the coach house. And because the studios were booked all the time, there's only 2 assistants. We were just all the time we were there. And I think when it got to Christmas and I went to get my Christmas wages off Anne, and she said, "Oh, here's your sheet for the year." And she went, "Oh, you've been slacking this year, Nick. You've had 4 days off this year." I know it was 4 days. I mean, I was only about 18 at the time, so you could deal with that. But those are long days. They're 7 days a week.
Do you find, like on the long sessions, do you find that when you stop, that's when your body catches up and it almost crashes? So you slack off over Christmas.
I felt terrible over Christmas. Felt absolutely terrible. When you're in the studio, you just keep going, don't you? And if you feel rough a few days, you just keep going. The one thing that filled me with dread on those sessions is you might have done a 6-week album session. And you know what it's like. The last night probably goes on till 4, 5 in the morning because it's all on tape. So, you've got to get everything bounced onto the tapes, whether you're recording the chambers in and the echo plates and things like that, backing up the tapes. If you're making tape copies, it goes on 5, 6 in the morning. You've got to do recalls of all the settings when it was all analog. And then you've got to pack the studio down because every band has a blank canvas when they come in. So you've just done 6 weeks with all these really long hours. You've packed the studio down. It's immaculate. The cleaners are coming in to hoover at 9 a.m. and you're taking the tray of plates and cups back up to the bungalow, and the van for the next band is arriving. And you haven't been to bed. You've finished a 6-week session, and as you're taking the dirty cups up, the band is arriving for the next session, which could be a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-week session, and there's no time in between the two. And that the feeling of that, your heart sinking, going, I've not been to bed, and now I've got to set up a whole band with a whole new load of people that I don't know, different producer, different engineer. And it's that kind of thing where you just take a deep breath, put on a big kind of smile, and I have to have energy because you don't want the band to turn up and go, hey, mate, how you doing? You're like, well, to be honest with you, I'm really fucked. Really can't be bothered with this today.
It doesn't work.
They don't want that.
You don't want to
they
bring
want
the
the
session
same
down.
enthusiasm, the same kind of energy, the same, they're excited. They're about to start an album. They're about to start their journey of recording at Rockfield. And so, that was tough back then when it was back to back and you wouldn't go to bed and you knew there was no time to recover. You were just going to be pretty much tired for the next session. But, we were young and there was...
No. And that's why you end up having 3 in Leeders Farm.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough at Leeders Farm to have the 3 great assistants. I was just telling you about only having 2 at Rockfield when both studios were fully booked. The same happened at Leeders. And we had the 2 studios fully booked. So we needed 3 assistants because I'd been in that situation before and was like, you can't have just 2 assistants with 2 studios running all the time. So we had 3. We went through quite a few, like people were put up an advert and there was like 197 applications in 24 hours for the job. Whittled that down to about 14 that I actually gave phone interviews to. And then I think about 8 came for interviews. So most of those came and weren't suitable for whatever reason. Some were nightmares. There was a few that came in, lasted a few weeks, but just... I don't know, the initiative wasn't there. It was just, just little things that start to bug you when you're running a business. Like, the TV's been moved out of one of the rooms by a band, and you say to the assistant, "Can you take the TV and put it back?" And then you go into that room later, and there's a TV just in the middle of a floor in a bedroom, and you have to go and get them and go, "Do you think that's where the TV goes?" And you shouldn't really have to explain those things. They seem quite trivial, but when they're kind of all day, every day, these things, you're like, this guy can't think for themselves. They can't. The thing to do is to put the TV back where it should go, plug it in, connect it, make sure it's working, and then leave it. And that it's the assistants that do that have got something about them. So we were lucky in the end. We had 2 local guys, Owen Morgan, who's a fantastic musician from Norwich, wonderful Alex, who was from just round the corner from the studio, Alex Edmonds, and we had Dougal, or Dougal Watt, or Braveheart, as we called him, mad Scotsman with mad hair, like drinking whiskey. So the other 2 were local, and he came from afar. So his position was a living position, so he got to live in the studio as rent-free and kind of supplied his expenses, his food. And then we just put them on retainers because it's difficult to, you don't want to not pay someone, but you can't really afford to have them all on the payroll every day because there's just not enough money in the sessions in the studio to do that. So we put them on retainers, and that meant they could go off and do other things. So Owen could do his gigs because he was a great jazz musician, had lots of jazz gigs. They could do Alex was doing live sound or a few production things at home. With 2 studios and 3 assistants, there's always someone can have a day off or a night off. So someone can go, I've got a gig so-and-so, so can you do that one? And between them, it just worked. So someone could have the time off to go and earn extra money doing other things. And that would bump their money up. And obviously when the engineering sessions came in, they would get paid as engineers. And those 3, they were just really... the heart and spirit of that studio. They were brilliant. They kind of helped us elevate it to a great studio and stayed with us for a long time. And when I left, it was quite emotional leaving those 3, because if I could have taken them with me and done it again, I'd have taken them with me, because they all just worked so hard. We're all really good engineers, got on with everybody. I mean, had some great nights, mainly drinking nights with Dougal. Some brilliant fun with them all, everybody who worked with them loved them. And because we had the smaller studio there, they could engineer bands, which was fast tracking their engineering experience, because they could go into the small studio with a local band. The kind of pressure's off, really. And around those three, we would have interns or work experience people, and that was a little bit hit and miss. Sometimes it's just common sense. You say to someone, right, that fridge there is the band stuff, and that fridge is the house stuff. So help yourself to the stuff in that fridge, but don't touch anything in that fridge. And later on, Kate comes to the fridge and gives me a call. She says, "Come here a minute," and I go into the kitchen, and in this fridge, the band fridge, is like smashed glass everywhere. So there's glass in food, there's glass got in the trifle, there's glass got everywhere, and it's all there. We're like, what the hell's happened here? And then one of the work experience guys comes in and he says, "Oh yeah, I went to get a jug of water and I dropped the jug of water in the fridge and it went down and smashed and it's gone everywhere." And he's like, "Did you not think to tell someone or pick
Someone
that up?
needs to know.
There's glass in it." He said, "You said not to touch anything in that fridge because it's the band fridge." And it's just moments like that. And he's like, "Yeah, but not when you've smashed a massive jug. We mean don't go eating all their food or drinking all their beer. If you smash a massive jug on everything, you have to come and tell us or clean it up." So there's little things like that. We've had some funny moments. I mean, an assistant called D'Artagnan, and he was brilliant. So yeah, he got a few ideas above his station, and there's a wonderful article written in the local press where he claims to have got a 5-year contract as an engineer, because we were so impressed with his massive skills that we immediately went, sign this guy up on a 5-year deal for 60 grand a year. I mean, it's not footballers. It's not footballers. You don't get contracts. You don't have you don't get signed up as an assistant on 60 grand a year. It just doesn't happen. So anyway, he told this to the press, and then it kind of escalated. And there's a wonderful article all about it in the the East Anglian Daily Press or whatever it was. And in it is a photo. And it says in the photo, it's Ray and myself and Dan Hawkins from The Darkness. But in fact, me and Dan aren't in the picture at all. This is how good the journalism is. Dan's one of the most famous musicians in the country at the time. And they've written that this is me and Dan in this picture. And it's quite clearly not us. It's just D'Artagnan with his 2 university lecturers who are now under so much pressure because they've got this pupil who's signed a 5-year contract on 60 grand a year. We're saying that he's the best thing ever, that they pass him through his course when I don't think he was going to pass. And all of a sudden he did amazingly pass with top marks on top of his class because they were under so much pressure. And he became like the poster boy. You walked in and it was like almost like this massive mural of kind of D'Artagnan saying, "You too could be like D'Artagnan if you..." Yeah, gold statue. "You too could be D'Artagnan if you come here. You can end up with this, massive contract." It was so funny. Yeah, and there was in the interview, there was loads of things saying that it was, he did this and did that, and none of it was true whatsoever. So he did maybe use a little bit of initiative there, John, but maybe too much initiative.
But surely people would have noticed that he was never at the studio.
Yeah.
Did he go to the studio? Did he actually turn up at the studio?
Yeah, he used to come. Yeah, he used to come on the sessions, and he was assisting with us on work experience, while doing his college course. But we definitely didn't sign him up on his 5-year contract on 60 grand a year. And as far as I know, there was an investigation that had to take place afterwards. Yeah, it was. It's very difficult then to approach that, And the worst thing is then they start moonlighting because people going, well, we'll get this guy who they think is the best thing ever on 60 grand a year to mix our tracks, and he's moonlighting under the Leeders Farm name. And then I'm getting phone calls from people, angry mothers. "You've mixed my son's tracks. You charge this much money. It sounds terrible. They haven't seen any track." And I'm going, "I'm really sorry. I have no idea who you are." And they're like, "My son's band, such and such." And "Nope, never heard of them." And of course you realize then they've been moonlighting under our banner and doing very bad work or not doing the work, taking money, and it reflects on us. So all those people are then saying, "Well, we went to that studio and the work was really bad and we didn't get our thing and they charged us this when we didn't." So that's the downside of doing something like that, is how that reflects. If you're not a good producer and engineer yet and you start saying you are, and then you start moonlighting without the studio knowing anything about it, it comes back because we got angry complaints and we had to kind of deal with all that stuff then. Yeah, and there's we could go out great stories. I mean, one of our we had Andy Bell, who was our first Leeders Farm assistant, and what a legend he is. And has gone on to become like folk producer of the year and produce many folk albums of the year, win awards as folk album of the year. Fantastic guy, fantastic producer engineer. He really helped us get that business off the ground because he was already a proper engineer, really, and he had something about him, and everybody loved him. Before that, we had our very first Leeders Farm assistant, who was a young lad called Acer, who you'd have Acer on a session in a heartbeat just because he was so funny. You never knew what he was going to come out with. I mean, from a technical aspect, never in a million years, But what a legend to have around. I mean, some of his sayings that he came out with are still legendary in our world. You could tell him anything, bless him. But there's moments that'll just stay with me forever. It was just so, it was like, yeah, he's not the best assistant in the world, but we've got to have him around. You can't not have this guy around because he's so brilliant to have around. Moments when you could convince him he was hypnotized or whatever, and and so he'd be going around all day thinking he was hypnotized. And then you'd ask him to go up a ladder, and he wouldn't. He's like, I can't go up a ladder. I'm hypnotized. I can't go up there. So brilliant. Say he came out with so many.
It's still like drinking and driving, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and he probably still doesn't know to this day that Bryan Adams wasn't asleep in the cottage room when he was there one day, because he loved Bryan Adams, and so we told him that Bryan Adams was there after his concert. He had nowhere to stay, so he rang us up and said, "Can I stay with you?" And then it was terrible, So then we tell him Bryan Adams is there, but we tell him you can't go near the cottage because he's sleeping, and you didn't. We stayed out, had a few beers. You can't, don't go near there, and he's on gardening duties that day. So he's like, right, I won't go near there. So no garden near there. And you see him slowly work his way around from one side of the garden till he's right outside the window, all of a sudden paying far too much attention to the shrubbery outside the cottage window, trying to get a peek in so he can get a look. And he comes in. I think I saw him. I think he's up. He's up. I just saw him walk past the window. I know I shouldn't have been over there, but the shrubs really needed doing over there. And he's like, oh, you saw him, did you? He's up. And then we sent him off to the shop to get something, and he comes back and he goes, is he up yet? And he was like, yeah, he just came and had breakfast with us all. He's gone now. He had to shoot off. His car came. He's like, I can't believe I've missed him. And he probably doesn't know to this day that Bryan Adams was not asleep in there. He was just brilliant to have around on sessions. But their kind of Acer stories are legendary.
I suppose like the positive energy and stuff as well. Like if there's like a good vibe or like there's a good energy to it, you want to have them around. Whereas, as you were saying, when there's someone like maybe a bit down, and kind of bring the mood down.
Yeah, I mean, he went on to have a great career, became an electrician in the end and did really well, big projects, did really well for himself. So, because he could learn, he would take things in, he was, paying attention. Maybe it wasn't suited to him as a producer engineer, but you'd have him around. And in that environment, like a tradesman environment as well, where the camaraderie, getting on with people's really important, you knew he'd fit into any environment. There'd always be banter because he'd always come out with some absolute classics, but he'd fit into that kind of world, as well. So yeah, he went on to do well for himself as well.
I think, as you said about the students who come through from university, and I think may not be at the level that they think they are sometimes, or they think they're producers. I think once or twice I was like, when they kind of come in, or they kind of come to help out, it's like, look, just back me up on anything that I say, and like in terms of don't try jumping over toes or stuff. I think.
Yeah, I mean it's really awkward when the band don't know this person, and it's a bit there's been a bit of stress, a bit of tension going on for a little while, and then somebody new comes into the room, and within 5 minutes of the guitar player not getting a thing, someone asking, "Oh, pass us that guitar, I can show you how to do that," or "Why don't you do it like this?" or "That sounds just like so and so."
So the last thing anyone wants to hear.
Anyone wants to hear when they're going through hell,
It sounds exactly like this song.
Yeah, I know. Or touching or huffing when they're on like take 17 and like, is he always like this? There's comments like that, and it does happen. But yeah, I think you've got to assume that you know nothing. You've been to uni. Technically, yes, you're a producer and an engineer because you finished your course. You're qualified in it. You do produce tracks for yourself. You do engineer tracks for yourself. But you're essentially a bedroom producer stroke engineer at that point, not a studio one, because you haven't had the experience of working in a studio. So you have to come into the studio just assume you know nothing, because if you come in with the preconceptions that you're just going to start producing these records with these, there's so much more that it takes to produce and engineer a record and guide different people through the process. You assume you know nothing and just try and fit in. And the technical knowledge comes in handy, but it's almost like an added bonus that you call on if needed.
I suppose there would be a lot more assistants and engineers if everyone was on 60 grand a year in a training role.
Yeah,
I think budgets might be a little bit higher.
Yeah, but it's it's not because anyone wants everyone to work for free. That's not the case. It's because there's no budgets on the sessions. We're all hammered on our budgets. The studios are expensive. We work a lot of hours. Most of the time, the budget for an assistant has to come out of our own money. You can't get the money from a label for an assistant. If we could, we would, and it would go to the assistant. So you can offer accommodation, food, expenses, and maybe a little bit of money on top. So you have to be prepared. It's either you spend years scratching around trying to get your foot through a door of a studio and never getting anywhere, or trying to learn the business but never working with people who actually are in the business, or you go, right, you can sacrifice this. I can figure a way I can support myself. This is my foot through the door. This is my way into the industry for what I do now for the next year or 18 months of not earning any money. But at the end of it, I am a producer and engineer. I have experience working in other studios. I've met lots of other producers and engineers, managers, artists, record companies. So, that's the only way and the best way. And you've learned how to be on a session so that when you start doing it, you know the situations that arise, you know how to deal with them, you know how to work with a band, you know how to get the best out of them. And we've all had to do it. I was... £29 a week, 100-hour weeks, 29 pence an hour. But I might as well have been nothing. I'd have still have done it for nothing. But it was where else was better to be in the 90s than Rockfield? Where else was to learn other than with the producers that were coming through that studio at the time and the engineers? That's how I became a producer and engineer. Just working those hours, put the effort in, being in a place that was full of great bands, great producers, great engineers. And Rockfield had great assistants, so I could kind of watch them as well.
Step your way up,
yeah, and it gives you confidence, and then you the experience, and then you're so confident. Then when you go to another studio and it's maybe a desk that you haven't used before and a room you don't know, you're kind of a bit more confident of working in another environment. And that's another great thing when you come work with people like us. Is we don't just work in one studio; we work in several. So you get to learn about different studios and the quirks of different studios and how different desks work and how to mic up a kit if it's in a dead room or a big live room. So all these things, I mean, it's still the best route into the industry. All the ones that have come through us will tell you that. Josh Tyrrell, they're so talented, they'll go on to do something anyway. But maybe it just sped up the process a little bit, or it helped them on their journey, that little bit more. But the others who maybe had to work a bit harder at it, but still went on to become great engineers and producers, maybe fast track them and got their foot through that door. And once that's on your CV, you can go into other studios and you can get jobs at other studios once you've got places like Rockfield and the big producers that go there on your CV, and working with us, working with big bands and things like that that's on your CV. You're away.
Yeah, I suppose that leads nicely to the fact that we have a production workshop coming up in Leeders Vale. I've got to find the website address now. I think it's sessionrecord.com/Leeders Vale, which is a 3-day session in April. And it is literally just like an opportunity. We will limit it to 8 people. And it is just like an opportunity just to talk about recording, production approaches, and mixing approaches as well. And it's really just to focus to help people who are maybe starting out and helping train just towards approaching for recording.
Yeah, it's going to be a great few days. Obviously, we're going to cover everything that the people who are attending want to cover, but also our experiences. I'm talking more about your route into the industry as well, if that's what you're after, as well as, covering everything, not just production, not just engineering. If you want to get a job in a studio, and maybe we'll find new assistants that can come and work with us on these things as well. And also experienced producers and engineers who maybe have only ever made records for themselves in their own home studios, who want to come and find out what it's like to with other engineers and other producers and other artists and get experience so they can branch out of their own studios and maybe go and work with other people. So it's open to kind of people of all levels, people of all stages of their career. We'll be covering a lot in the 3 days. It's going to be a good 3 days.
Thanks again, Nick. I think that more or less covers everything. Thanks again for watching, listening.
Afternoon tea.
Oh, lush. Spanish afternoon tea.
I'm off to an afternoon tea.
that was
Spanish afternoon. Well, it's English. It's English afternoon tea in a Spanish school. So it's at the kids' school. So we're going for afternoon tea. They're doing an English afternoon tea, or British, I should say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, enjoy. Love the family, and I'll see you again.
I will. Thanks, John.
For the next one.